Hi everyone, welcome to week 9. This week we're going to be focusing on 2 assignments. The first one is the Fallacy Bias Resource assignment. This is going to be on your discussion board for this week. And basically you should have chosen a cognitive bias or logical fallacy last week and signed up for it on the sign-up sheet. And you want to do that to make sure that nobody else has already taken that cognitive bias or logical fallacy, right? Then once you've done that, you're going to put together some multimodal document that is going to go over the logical fallacy or cognitive bias you chose. And so multimodal just means that it's going to have some sort of visual design, images, sound, video. It should have something that kind of makes it kind of compelling to look at, kind of interesting, memorable. Because what I want is for you to have these in your mind, these different cognitive biases and fallacies in your mind while you're doing more and more research on your conspiracy theory. That way, whenever you are trying to figure out which one of these you're going to use in your paper, because remember, you need to use one of these in your paper, either cognitive bias or logical fallacy or both, or you can use multiple. But you're going to want to use at least one. And that way you'll kind of be like, oh, wait, wasn't there that one about circular reasoning or something? So kind of looking through some of these, I noticed, a few of you have made some really cool ones. The other assignment that we have this week is we're going to actually get started drafting our debunking a conspiracy theory paper. And so we're going to write the summary paragraphs of the paper. First, you want to write your official summary. This is going to be from the perspective of scientists, government officials, whoever is considered the expert on this topic. If it's a celebrity conspiracy theory, that can even be the celebrity themselves, like Britney Spears, for example, or Avril Lavigne. Okay, and then you're going to want to go through things like definition, timeline, etc. Give us those basic facts. What is the main argument here? We're going to get into the more detailed versions of these arguments in the later body paragraphs when you're doing your debunking argument. And so just keep to the basics at this level, okay? This would be a good place to put in like a quote or a fact that you found from your primary research, because this is a place where you can show that you've done the research. You're going to fairly represent each side using their own, like using their direct source, right? Like directly from them, not as represented by a journalist or something, right? But directly from them, to make sure that it's as fair as possible and representative as possible. Okay. Then you're going to want to do side 2, which is going to be the conspiracy side of the argument, right? This is from the perspective of people who believe in the conspiracy theory. So, and I have some examples in here, but this could be, a lot of times these are going to be, like flat earthers or, and I'm not gonna be able to think of any now, people who believe there's an alien at Roswell and things like that, right? Whatever the conspiracy theory is. Again, I want you to try and use your primary source if possible, and it's okay though if you need to rely on other sources as well, because you really want to give a basic overview. Again, keep it very simple here because we're going to get into the more detailed arguments a little bit later. And again, you want to keep this as fair as possible. So even though you are eventually going to need to argue against the validity of the conspiracy theory, you still want to make sure and you represent it fairly and that you make the people who believe in that conspiracy theory feel like they have been represented. Okay, so you don't want to present a straw man argument here, right? You want to make sure that you've listened to them and that you're representing their argument fairly before you get into why it's probably not true, right? So that's our 2 assignments for this week. That's really all I want you to focus on. And then next week we'll get into some more stuff. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope you had a great break, and I will see you next week.